All right, here we go. Welcome to the June trustee meeting of Park Township. I'd like everyone to rise, and Trustee Jones will open us with invocation.
Dear Father, unite with grateful hearts. While the storm was something to see, we're exceedingly grateful that no one was seriously hurt. Property can be fixed, houses can be repaired. We're just exceedingly grateful that no one's hurt. Pray for your blessing over our community, that we come together around those people and not forget about that. That we do what we can individually and as a community for them. And we're grateful for the opportunity to gather tonight to discuss what's going on in the township. We ask for good governance. We ask for open minds and good conversation. And we ask for your blessing in and around that. Do you say a prayer, amen?
Amen. Pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great. Well, welcome again to the June meeting. You picked a delightful night to be inside. So, and the agenda is on your dais, and you had a chance to review it this week. Is there any changes or deletions to the agenda as it stands? Okay, seeing none or hearing no objections, I'll take a motion to approve the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda.
Support. Great. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Just one note, Trustee Cern alerted us last month that he was not going to be here. So excused absence on him. Thank you. Approval of the consent agenda. We had a special meeting last May, and we have some minutes that we could approve. So approval of the minutes and the payment of the bills. Let's do one at a time. Any changes or deletions to the minutes from that special meeting that we had on that third Thursday? All right, seeing none, I'll take a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Support. All right.
And just so you know, I'm going to abstain because I wasn't there, so I can't comment.
All good. All right. All in favor of the approval of the minutes? Say aye.
Aye.
Oh, don't we have a second? I thought we had one.
I'll support.
Oh, I'm sorry. Second. All right. Thank you for keeping us on. Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Jim, for noting that. Payment of the bills. I want to take those two separately. Thanks for noting that. Payment of the bills. Any comments on that? All right. I'll take a motion.
Motion to approve.
Support.
Okay. Two. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion passes. Great. All right. This is always a fun part. You've heard this before. We're going into our first of our two public comment periods. We appreciate your participation in our meeting this evening. You have the right to address the board on any issue you'd like. It's your time for public comment. We will respectfully listen to you, but not yet engage in conversation or debate. It may seem odd, but we do have an agenda and township business to attend to. If you desire further discussion on your topic, please schedule an appointment with our manager, Howard Fink, or if this is awkward, please contact myself, Steve Spoolhoff. In order to keep the meeting moving, please limit your comments to 2 to 2.5, 3 minutes. Appreciate that. Thank you in advance for keeping your comments respectful. So we'll start on the left side here today on the first couple rows. Is there any comments that aren't pertaining to the agenda? I see a couple people who have a couple agenda items that they'll have an opportunity to speak then. Going back a couple rows, going back to the back row. I see some no's. All right. No one on the left side. Okay. On the right, my right, your left, please. Come forward. Yeah, yes. Front row, please come.
My name is Jim Hagel, live at 468 Island View Drive, and I'm president of the 36-member Pine Island Homeowners Association. You've heard our concerns numerous times before. A 3 to 4 foot drop in the water level of our 7-acre pond was largely caused by the weeks-long 24/7 dewatering and the Blue Haven development to our immediate east. I believe this fact is indisputable. We have had no objection to the Bowman development or his future development, Trailview, to our immediate north. However, we feel justified in expecting the developer to be a good neighbor and correct the harm that his actions have already caused and will likely cause again as the Trailview dewatering begins. With these facts in mind, we strongly suggest that when the Trailview dewatering begins, the water be pumped across James Street and into our pond to start replacing the water that we have already lost, rather than into a ditch that may ultimately flow to Lake Macatawa. Doesn't this make sense? I asked the board and the developer to be empathetic. If you were in our place, how would you feel? What would you expect to be done? Let's work together to rectify the problem. Thanks for listening and hopefully seriously considering what we feel is a reasonable solution.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to all of the trustees for this opportunity to speak. My name is Kevin Verda, and I'm here again on behalf of the Pine Island neighborhood, where I am a resident, to speak on the Trailview development proposal coming up as agenda item 11C. It is clear to us from your decision to postpone approval at your last meeting to the work done by Mika Weiss and Ken Bosma that our concerns about impacts to our pond water elevation have been taken seriously, and we appreciate that. I've read the memorandum from Mika included in the board packet for this meeting, and we're encouraged to see the recommendation to approve the development. It also includes the condition that the developer mitigate undesirable changes to groundwater level or flow resulting from dewatering or other development activities. However, upon reading the entire packet, we note that Exhibit A, Part 4, Section 21C, which defines negative impact, our pond would have to be 24 inches below plan for 6 months after completion of dewatering activity before our neighborhood would be considered negatively impacted. While we're glad that there's some conditions in there, we believe that we've already been negatively impacted as we're experiencing a drop already at 25 inches below our plan level, which is about 36 inches below our normal spring level because of the dewatering at the Blue Haven development. Given our current situation, having to endure an additional 24-inch drop for 6 months after the Trailview dewatering doesn't seem fair and reasonable to our neighborhood. For this reason, when the Trailview development comes up for approval later this evening, we respectfully request that you strike the language defining negative impact as a reduction of 24 inches over a 6-month period, and that you insert language to define negative impact as any further reduction in our water level once dewatering activity for Trailview begins. Of course, the easiest way to ensure we avoid further negative impact of this kind is for the developer to direct the water from the Trailview dewatering activities into our pond, as Jim mentioned. The water has to go somewhere. Instead of into a drainage ditch, it could go into our pond. Thank you for this opportunity and for considering that request.
Anyone else on the right side? Close public comment at this time, and continue with our, thank you for your comments, and appreciate that. So obviously get into the Trailview discussion much later, a little bit later. So
Thank you for that. So just a reminder why we're here, as we do a little musical chairs up here. Our Park Township mission continues to be in front of us every week, every month. The Park Township is a family-friendly, connected community that values our natural features, agricultural character, and recreation opportunities. Our mission hasn't changed. We proactively listen and lead, providing exceptional services and amenities while carefully stewarding our resources. And we do that with the values of integrity, respect, and being genuine. So with that in mind, we will continue our meeting. So all of us had a chance to read our department reports. And if I can make one comment, we saw one report visibly out in our parking lot as we walked in. So I mean, that we have a tangible example of something that's happening in our township. Thank you, Chief. But any other comments or questions on the reports?
I had a question for the chief.
Sorry about that.
I noticed that under medical calls, you had 10 false alarms and disregards. What were the false alarms about?
Sometimes we'll get a call where our residents will have a medical alert alarm and it goes off, which is monitored by a third party. And so we're automatically turned or called out. Central dispatch calls the homeowner and the home or the resident, the patient can say, yeah, everything's okay. I just bumped it or whatever. But automatically when you have like a life alert, soon as they get depressed, the life alert dispatcher monitors it. They make the call in and we get alerted. So,
And then assisting AMR, what is that?
okay, when you look at your report, if it says medical, that's we're on the scene first. If it says medical assisting AMR, they were the first agency on the scene. So they might have had a unit out here. We might have been attending another call in that. So that's how when we look in and we can take all of our medical calls, we look at it as a strategic thing, and I can see how many times we're on scene first. The majority of our calls will be on scene first.
Okay. So, yeah, that surprises me that they would get there before you would that many times because it was 7.
Well, and sometimes if it would be a priority 3, we're not responding to priority 3 unless they're tied up. They may need maybe our patient is in an upstairs bedroom and got to be carried down. Maybe they've dispatched us and said, hey, we need help carrying a patient down safely, or maybe it's a larger patient that they need help getting it to the ambulance.
Okay.
So
What did who assisted with this before our program?
usually the E unit.
The unit. Oh, okay. All right. Very good. Thanks.
But that's the biggest difference. If you see medical, we're on the scene first.
Okay.
Chief, you got one question, clarifying question. In your report, you said unit 1522. If I believe I had the number right, 1522 was damaged in the storm.
Yes.
What unit was that?
That's our frontline engine coming out of here.
Okay.
They were responding to a call, and right during the storm, we had a 5 to 6 inch branch fall, and it hit the front of the truck. Probably if that truck was 2 to 3 minutes sooner, we could have had some hurt firefighters or a fatality of firefighters.
Oh my.
It took off the front siren off the front of the truck, about $2,000 worth of damage.
Oh my. Okay. Well,
So
I'm glad no one is hurt.
Yeah, we got lucky on that one.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Super. Any other comments on the department reports? And otherwise we'll continue on. All right, good. Super. We'll continue on. This is a fun meeting. We have a chance to recognize a volunteer in our community that has been part of the Planning Commission and other activities for a long time, and contributing in many ways. And so if I can just ask Dave Clenyons to come towards the front, and we will recognize him with a proclamation. Now, I have the opportunity to say this. I have an opportunity to get to know Dave over the last 3-4 years, and not over an extended period as some of my colleagues, but it's been delightful. So let me, on behalf of Park Township and my colleagues, let me just recognize you. A proclamation in recognition and profound appreciation of distinguished service of Dave Clemens. Whereas Dave Clemens began his service in Park Township as an appointed planning commissioner in December of 2016 and became chairperson in 2022 for 3 years until the end of May, for a total of 8.5 years. Whereas Dave also served previous terms on the Zoning Board of Appeals and Planning Commissions, thus bringing a breadth of experience which was clearly visible in his work. And whereas Dave was instrumental in the creation of Park Township's tree preservation ordinance and the recent update of the Township Master Plan, and effectively led the Planning Commission through some contentious issues. Whereas Dave's leadership and steady approach gave the Planning Commission the ability to look past the noise into a brighter, more cohesive future. Whereas Dave was more than a Planning Commission chairperson, was a friend, a confidant, and mentor to many. Amen to that. Whereas Dave's Planning Commission colleagues expressed appreciation for his leadership, knowledge, innovative thinking, close detail, attention to detail, and integrity. Whereas Dave's colleagues also described him as a wonderful mentor and as a role model who exhibited steadiness and care in interacting with other members of the Planning Commission and the public. Whereas Dave brought to his role a clear vision for the Planning Commission as an independent body charged with guarding and improving the lives of Park Township and committed to the well-being of the community as a whole. Whereas Dave's concern for the well-being of the community was also seen in his passion for environmental causes and looking for ways that he as an individual and in his role on the Planning Commission would address climate change. Whereas Dave's integrity, strength of character, and commitment to principle is exhibited in the consistency with which he shows up in every area of his life. Whereas Dave has the ability to be honest and true to himself, but does it in a way that makes people feel comfortable being their authentic selves. Also, Dave also will now have time to dedicate to jams, Clem, it starts with a K. Is it jams?
K-Jams.
K-Jams.
That's my pedal.
Jams is your company. His well-regarded guitar pedal business, where he duplicates the sound of some very famous pedals that are not done electronically. And whereas Dave has been recognized as a skilled guitar player whose future contribution to the community will include his renditions of hits by Santana and other rock and roll legends. There's some really meaty stuff in here.
There are a lot of
in his basement and with his esteemed group of musicians known as the Johnny Park Band, and was playing at the Bike Bash last weekend. Whereas Dave has proven himself to be a valuable asset to Park Township with his leadership, vision, and vast knowledge and insight of the township's land use and development. Whereas Dave has dedicated a significant portion of time to the improvement of Park Township and has done so with integrity and careful analysis, all the while remaining committed to the continuing positive relationships with the board, planning commission, staff, and community. Whereas this proclamation is presented to Dave to serve as a reminder that he will be remembered as a valued planning commissioner dedicated both to his position and to our community. Therefore, be it resolved that the Park Township formally acknowledges and extends its profound appreciation to Dave Clemens for his many years of service to the residents of Park Township. Now, therefore, I, Steve Spooloff, Supervisor of Park Township, and on behalf of the Board of Trustees, my colleagues here, hereby present this proclamation to Dave Clemens for his many important contributions and community service to Park Township. And I would like to take a voice vote and verbally affirm what I just read. All in favor of this proclamation, say aye. And I don't hear it. I'm not going to ask for the nays. So with that, Dave, congratulations. If you want to have a couple words, we appreciate what you've done for us.
Thank you for the many kind words. And I'm sorry to make the meeting run longer than it did. But no, I'm happy to have had the chance to serve, and I've had a lot of fun working with the staff and the planning commission. And I think we're in good shape for the future. So thank you.
And you've done, you've served us well, served the community, and I just thank you. Thank you in a big way. You navigated a period of contentious time, and I just want to celebrate your willingness to get into the mess, but had done it with such integrity that thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have a couple things for you here. Certainly, your nameplate. I'm sure it'll be in a special place at home. And here's the last group of folks that were there. Super. And here you go. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. What a pleasure. It's tough to follow something like that. So thank you for this respectful appreciation of one of our key community members. We're going to continue on, and Prina Newhoff Scott Post, is he here? There's Scott. Tough act to follow, but well, do your best.
Yeah, thank you. I was actually going to say that wow, how to follow that, but something to look up to. That's really amazing. I hope someday somebody says even half those words to me, but that's impressive. So yeah, so I'm here to talk about the 152nd Avenue bike path, give you an update as to where we are and where we've come. The project, as you know, looking back many years, back in 2002, I believe through the McIntyre Recording Council, you guys were able to acquire CMAQ, congestion mitigation, air quality, as well as carbon reduction grants for that bike path project. It was set for fiscal year 2025, and here we are in fiscal year 2025. So we just started the design process then last summer. It's an MDOT project. It's called a local agency project. That's through the Ottawa County Road Commission, because they're your local agency that can receive transportation funds. So we completed the design and submitted it in July to the Road Commission and MDOT for a what's called a grade inspection meeting, which was held in August with the Township and with various representatives from all those governmental agencies. Last year, correct, last July. Yep. And it was reviewed by everyone at the time, and we were given review comments from MDOT and everything. So we made those review comments, and from the Road Commission. Submitted it then in December in hopes to get into a February letting, a February bid date, and have it be able to start early in the spring. At that time, the Road Commission was looking at it and requested that go ahead. Did you have a question? Sorry. Requested that we relook at the corner of Quincy and 152nd, realign the crossing there, and in the execution of that, they wanted a 24-inch culvert underneath Quincy Street on the west side of the intersection replaced as part of the project. Yeah. So we added that after talking with Howard, and we're working with the Road Commission, we added that to the project and redesigned it. It was an iterative process because there's a bank of AT&T, 24 bank of AT&T fiber optic right on that corner too, which complicated that problem, which is probably why the Road Commission hadn't done it before. So, but finally got that done. And the good news is that the project was finally approved through MDOT in April, which put us in a July letting. So the project is on schedule now to be bid on July 11 and start construction probably early August, completing this year. So that's where we are to date. Is there any questions specifically regarding the project that you would like to discuss?
Just on behalf of the audience and the people online listening, could you describe which side and where the particular?
Oh, sure.
Just
Yeah.
because it's a little ambiguous.
No.
We jump right into the details without describing what it is.
No, I actually appreciate you calling me out on that. I tend to immediately dive in as if everybody's familiar with it. Yeah, so the project was to extend the township sidewalk or bike path network north on 152nd from Quincy to Ransom. It is on the east side of the road, and it's entirely within easements. You guys were able to, I think, working with Land Matters, Ken Bosma and Howard worked together to get easements from both the property owners, which included the Blueberry Farmer as well as the church. So the project is actually set back from the road a little bit, even farther east of 152nd Avenue, which makes for a nicer, more comfortable ride. And it ends at Ransom Street, where it ties into the pathway on Butternut Drive that continues north into Port Sheldon Township and further along the Lakeshore Trail.
Fantastic. Great. Any questions for Scott? If this is more of an update than any question. There's no approval. We approved it quite a few months ago. So any questions or comments?
The only comment I'll make, and Scott, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
If you disagree, that I think this is probably going to be likely the last bike path that receives CMAQ funding. We actually were somewhat surprised that we got it through to begin with. They have quite a bit cracked down on the use of CMAQ funds for bike paths. For those of you who are aware, CMAQ stands for Congestion Mitigation Air Quality, and it's a granting system through the feds. And it's pretty clear that while putting in a bike path is a good thing, it doesn't necessarily reduce emissions at the level and quantity that CMAQ requires, or things like a interchange realignment or looking at signal changes will do. And so our ability to potentially get CMAQ funds for bike paths is probably over. But we are happy that we got this one.
Yeah, no, and you're right, Howard. Actually, specifically, you'll see more use of CMAQ money for non-motorized applications in deeply urban environments like downtown Grand Rapids or in Detroit area, just because there's a calculation that there's some assumptions that you make when you fill out the grant application of how many people will no longer drive their car, but they'll ride their bike on that route. And as Howard noted, 152nd Avenue is a little bit rural, and so that
I remember when we were making this
those calculations are a little rare. Yeah.
What's the dollar value of the grant?
The dollar value of the grant was $402,000 or 75% of the construction costs.
Okay. We celebrate that grant.
Yeah.
So thank you, federal government.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's your money. They're just doing it back.
Yeah, it's coming back to us.
That's right.
Yes. Any other questions? Otherwise, we'll move on. So, okay, thank God. We look forward to completion of the project soon. Yeah, but I guess I'm surprised that you can let a project and get into construction that quickly. Is the capacity in the system there?
Yeah, that's a good question, because normally I'm actually fairly concerned bidding a project in July. When I do a project like this that falls under a specific MDOT schedule, I call contractors that I work with, and I've talked to several of them, and several of them said that the size of the project and then the flexible schedule that we've given them between now and November 15 fits into a lot of their schedules as something that they can fit right in. So I'm happy to report that.
Fantastic. Good. Well, appreciate your work on that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
All right. Thank you. Moving on to action items. The first action item, we were given a item from our Ottawa County Treasurer. So please explain.
Yes.
What we got going.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about this program with you. It's a new program that I am rolling out. The law recently changed, and it's allowing me to provide this program to delinquent taxpayers. What it is we're calling it the Tax Foreclosure Avoidance Payment Reduction Program. And it is for property owners who have 2 years of taxes in forfeiture, or a combination of 1 year in forfeiture and 1 year in delinquency. And they have to have a principal residence exemption on their home. If they qualify for the program, and there are qualifications they have to meet, it's a 5-year program that they would sign an agreement with me, and they would make monthly payments to us. and it would get their delinquent taxes paid. One of the requirements in the program, and this is set up in the law, states that they have to keep their current taxes paid. So they cannot go delinquent. Benefit to the township would be that you get your money sooner, because normally you would have to wait until after settlement. And I'm not sure if you know what settlement is, but that's when we balance with Jan. and then pay every taxing entity in April, and make everybody whole, and the county takes on that debt. So this program will not affect the township in any way. It's just in the law, it is required that I have to get a signed resolution by every board and council in Ottawa County before I can enter into any agreement with anybody from their unit. What it does is this program waives all the accrued interest and penalties. So I handed out a spreadsheet to you. You'll see the first page is a taxpayer that we have that currently owes taxes all the way back to 2020. Every year, we've been giving them a year's extension, and that's all we've been allowed to do in the past, is just do this one extension, and every year we give them an extension, and they never are able to get their taxes paid. If you go all the way back to the second page on that first one, the back of that first page, you'll see that in January of 38, it has 0. They've paid off their 2030 taxes, but the following year's taxes are still coming delinquent. So I mean, it's every year, it's the cycle of delinquency, and they can't get caught up. So with the new program, if you look at page 2, this same taxpayer will have their 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024 taxes paid in full by September of 2030. And that's because we are waiving the interest and the fees, and because they are required to keep their current taxes paid. So that stops the cycle of delinquency. You'll see, so on the first page, this taxpayer was paying $250 a month to us. We reduced their payment to $100 a month to us, giving them that extra $150 a month to pay their current taxes. One of the other things in the program is that they have to meet 200% poverty. And I'm not sure what your poverty guidelines are here in Park Township, but most of them are only 100%. So this is doubling that, and it's allowing me to give this program to more people, to people who don't meet the poverty exemptions. I've had a taxpayer who I had just gave a year extension to last year, who inherited his parents' home and 40 acres, and when they passed away. But he's disabled and he can't afford the taxes. So something like this, and he doesn't meet poverty requirements because he's land rich, house rich. So with this, I can give this program, I can offer this program to him, and we can get his taxes paid. Also, the benefit to the 200% is that Ottawa County Community Action Agency gets grants for weatherization of people's homes, like if they need new windows or if they need a new furnace, if they are having trouble paying utility bills. A lot of those requirements are 200%. So I'm able to forward their information on their name, their email address, their phone number onto Community Action Agency, and then they can help them fill out an application and see what else they can help them with. So that also helps the taxpayer with their other bills. Food assistance too, they can get that. It's not only is it working with their taxes, but it's helping them in other ways. Do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions. I think this is a great program. it avoids all of them going to the tax sale and losing their place. And I just think this is awesome. It will really help. It will not affect our finances at all. It does not apply to personal property tax, mobile homes and businesses and that kind of thing. So it would not apply to those at all. But we won't lose any money because the county has graciously for years funded the delinquents. We always get all of our tax money in April that haven't been paid. So just so you know, it doesn't affect, our budget at all. Great program. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, this is something that I campaigned on that's the part of my job that I don't like is foreclosing on people's homes. So I have tried very hard not to do that. And I've given many extensions for a year. And this program is now allowing me to help them more effectively. So I respectfully request that you approve the resolution.
Any other questions?
I will make the motion to accept the resolution as presented.
Thank you.
Did I hear a second?
I'll support.
Great, sure. Any questions or comments before we take a vote? All right, sounds like a great program, and thank you for your leadership on this.
Yes.
So all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Thank you.
Motion passes. Great, thank you. Thank you for keeping people in place. All right. Next item on the agenda. Appointment of to the Planning Commission. We had because of Dave's retirement from the Planning Commission. That's not the right word. He termed out in the Planning Commission. We had 6 candidates, and we had a delightful time interviewing all 6. It was very encouraging, and the team selected Mr. Dan Bourbon. You have his application in your packet. If there are any questions for Mika, myself, Howard, Tom is also in the audience. If there are any specific questions, be happy to answer. But I will personally make the motion to approve Dan Bourbon for this position.
Support.
Great, thank you. Any questions before we take the vote? All right. All in favor of Dan Bourbon as the next Planning Commission member, say aye. All opposed? Okay, motion passes. And we celebrate that we have volunteers. We had 6 volunteers eager to jump into the Planning Commission. That speaks well of our community. And it was fun. It was fun to participate in that process. Well, great. All right, moving on to the next item on is Trailview Development. And let's see, is it Mika or who's going to present we tabled it, if I recall, last month. And so there was some activity over the last month. So let's bring the board up to speed.
Yeah, I can give a brief update. Applicant is also here, and our township engineer, Ken Bosma, is also here. I think you'll probably have some questions for him. So over the past month, Brian and Newhoff has been measuring the pond levels in the surrounding areas. They have been generally trending upwards, as you would expect for groundwater to be recovering, but they are still below their normal levels. They have also been in conversation with the developers, engineers, discussing dewatering techniques. So when this concern initially came before the board and came to staff, the fear was that it was the pond construction that had caused this drop in water levels. And because there's a pond that's proposed for this Trailview development, which is the one that's before you today, there is concern that there would be some additional impact. Through the conversations and looking at the timing, it appears that the drop in the water level is related to dewatering from utility installations, so sanitary sewer and that sort of thing. So that would just be part of the project. The resolution was amended to include a number of mitigation technies, and also Ken has been talking to their engineers about how to keep the dewatering from having as much of an effect, focusing the dewatering a little bit more specifically on particular areas. I do want to mention one of the things that Ken has been talking to them about, or that has been in some kind of conversation, I'll let him give more detail on that, is directing that dewatering water potentially to that pond to the south, but there's also an active blueberry field to the west of that. So want to bear that in mind as well, that there might need to be more conversation about exactly where that dewatering water should go. The other item is just a timing item. So there's a utility installation happening in James this summer, late this summer to fall. And the intent, the last I heard, was for the Trailview utility installation to be happening at the same time. That would allow for just one additional dewatering time rather than stretching it out over time. And so timing is a little bit of a concern here at this point. I want to make sure that we do all of our due diligence and know that we're making the decision, as informed a decision as we can. But there also is a little bit of a trade-off as far as whether that utility installation would be able to happen yet this construction year, or if there would have to be an additional dewatering time if we wanted to do a little bit more due diligence.
Coordinator.
For those who don't know me, I am Ken Bosma, Pride and Newhoff. So that's a good question. We've talked to the developer's engineer, and that was what they had indicated to us, that they had planned to do the same thing. I think the difficulty maybe of absolutely requiring is they don't have the permit yet for the sanitary sewer. So from the standpoint of trying to fit it into the structure, I know that was provided to Blue Haven, that they had a period of time that they had to do it. Maybe they can speak to that as well, but I think it's hopeful that they can both do it if they can get their permit done. We would like to see it done all at the same time as well. Yep.
Maybe the perfect thing says,
you might be able to define more the trail view portion as far as a dewatering issue on its own. The only thing is, again, we are doing it again. The issue with James Street particularly began because of your blueberry fields to the north side. So they're limited there as to the fall season, and also trying to coordinate with Ottawa County Road Commission to get that road back in place in time for the winter season. So I work with them so far, while we're not complete, has been very productive, and that they are working towards those solutions from both the developer side and from the road commission as well. So, yeah.
Is there a possibility of the dewatering water going into their pond?
Into Pine Islands?
Yeah.
Yes. So that was some of the discussion. Again, I have been submitted just earlier this week a dewatering plan from the developer that we are currently reviewing. Haven't completed that. We started that process, so I want to review and have more discussions with them. But that is one of the things I think they have acknowledged that where or when it occurs, we haven't maybe nailed that down, but they do intend to put some of that back into that pond. I will admit, from a dewatering standpoint, you are kind of fighting against yourself when you do that. You're filling the pond, but you're really pulling it back. So those conversations, again, we have to have a little bit more in depth on that.
Yeah, I don't want it to affect the blueberry farmers either,
Right.
so I know there's a lot of things going on at the same time.
Right, so we're spending our time first internally, and we'll be back to them. We had told them initially, but that we want to try to find where that cone of influence of groundwater is minimized. There's different ways of doing it. There are some ways that you can do it where maybe it's minimized, but the problem is it takes a lot longer to do versus other ways. So that's something we're trying to work through with them on.
And when you say you're fighting against yourself, I think I understand what you're saying in the analysis, but can you go deeper so everybody's aware of what you really mean by that?
Yep. So a good example of that is at Blue Haven, where they did put in the sanitary sewer and had a dewater there. When they started dewatering, it's our belief, and I know we came in a little bit later on this, but it's our belief that Pine Island water level was drawn down from itself. Okay. So you think about the distance from that road that they put sanitary sewer into their pond. Now going over to James Street, you might even be a little bit closer. So you're trying to dewater it, but you're filling the pond, so you're continuing to circulate that groundwater. So it does become a very tricky issue as far as dewatering.
If you're gonna put it back into the pond, it has to be in a situation that's not in the watershed.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Where would the water go normally if it wouldn't go into the pond?
So they would probably send it down a drain. I know that there's been conversations also with Joe Bush, Ottawa County Source Commissioner, about even putting it into the Park West drain, which is an enclosed drain system out for all the way out to the lake. So therefore, it would not get anywhere in there. He is in favor of putting it into Pine Island as much as we can too, and should it become where it's too much of an issue, he has offered to again still put it back into the Park West drain. So
When the comment was made about putting water on the blueberry fields or next door, what does that mean? You would just put it in the field in the fall?
well, again, we'll have some conversation with them, but it's our understanding that the blueberry farm, the best opportunity to do dewaterings so that the water table can then come back on its own is to do the dewatering in the fall here so that that water table can come back before that really impacts those blueberries. Yeah.
But you wouldn't, yes, we talked about putting water into the pond. You wouldn't put water onto the blueberry fields just as a general rule. I mean, or we put.
I guess, and I haven't
heard
heard if these guys or whatever have had any comments with the blueberry people. It's my understanding they more wanted that dewatering to occur, didn't mention anything about putting it there. It's more to fill Pine Island. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the clarification.
Yep.
Any questions? Any questions for the developer? I mean, as far as having them answer some questions or any?
So one clarification, where you might be difficult if we go to the same time, but then also.
Correct. And moving towards that to try to do them at the same time. That was one of our first calls a couple of weeks ago back to them to say, hey, we'd like to see them. And actually, while we were calling them, they were already thinking the same thing. So again, I think everybody's trying to get to that same point.
Where is the stuck on receiving the permit?
You want to bring the head check?
Yes. Good evening. My name is Chuck Hoyt. I'm with Naderveld, representing the developer. So specific to the permitting, it does get a little tricky, right? So if you can imagine Blue Haven, right? Blue Haven has their permits for water and sewer, which includes within James Street, the sanitary sewer that's going there. That's we'll call it a months-long process in order to obtain those permits, right? Typically, the process very simply would go, we would obtain all entitlement approvals, which would include Planning Commission and, of course, Township Board. Subsequent to that, we submit engineered construction drawings to the township engineer. Those get reviewed and modified as necessary and then approved. Once those are approved, then there is an application to Eagle. It's the state agency, Eagle. They're the ones that actually issue the water and sewer permits. Being a state agency, it takes time. Okay, so that process has been gone through with Blue Haven. For Trailview, we're in the midst of that process, and where we're at in that process is first obtaining township board approval, but then subsequent to that is providing construction drawings, which are reviewed by the township engineer. Once they're approved, then that submittal goes to Eagle. As I said, it's a months-long process. We're kind of up against the gun right now because that timeline with the blueberries says you have to start, you can't start before September. If to end before April, fair enough, but we also have the issue of the road commission, right? We have to get that road put back together. So what we're endeavoring to do is be prepared September 1 to do all this at once, right? As I understand, it's in everybody's best interest that it all kind of happens at one time. And that's what we're attempting to do, but we do have these constraints, right? We have to get, engineered construction drawing approval. It has to go to Eagle. It has to get their review and approval. And then we will have a permit in hand to then we can begin construction. And that just, it can take several months of time, which is why, we're doing everything that we can to move forward. And the township engineer, township staff have been great. It's been a good relationship to work with them to get towards that. I think the municipality, the developer, everybody is working towards the same goal, but it's a little tricky to get there because there are a lot of these constraints that we need to deal with.
Are the drawings at least started?
Oh yeah, certainly. We're basically done with them, but any changes that happen at this point, just delay it a little bit further. But certainly, yeah, Yep.
Just a question. I don't know if it's Mika or Ken or yourself, Chuck. There was a comment about the 24 inches mitigation. If it goes down 2 feet over 6 months, can someone speak to that? I'm horribly unqualified to make a call on
So
that.
am I. So I'm going to defer.
So I guess it's always hard to pick an exact number of why it is, but what we looked at is figuring that we don't know what's going to happen with the pond currently today. So right now we have been in quite a drought. The ground has been difficult to recharge, although we have seen the pond come up. Pine Island hasn't come up as much. I'm still believing that as Blue Island comes up, that's going to start feeding Pine Island. But going on that basis, there are the design normal water level that we have seen on plans. So what we picked here is to say, hey, we know that there's going to be could be some impact on this. If they go down 2 feet, that's maybe expected in this dry weather if we continue to have a drought through this year. We don't know. Now, if we have rains, we would expect it to come up. So I think that's kind of where that number has come from that regard. So
How much how much rain do you need to bring back? I mean, what's normal? Is there a normal?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, they're getting into a lot of modeling to do that, and that has not been put forward yet. Yep.
So would you advise us on like if we'd want to go less than 24 inches for mitigation?
I'm sure mitigation.
I guess my question would be is what impact are we trying to prevent? So while I understand the concern of the property owners with regard to the pond being down, from talking to them, we had a nice meeting a few weeks back, and their concern was the fish. And then the other concern, which I get to, is the saleability of a lot if it's for sale. From my perspective, a lot of my flooding issues and things that I get involved in are concerns of things that affect structural issues and things like that, or health, safety, and welfare. So from that perspective, I struggle with reducing it that triggers something, and then how are you going to recharge it? There's the likelihood only is to use municipal water in a sense to continue to fill that. Is that a good resource of using municipal water? So that's why I struggle with the suggestion you're maybe asking.
You're the professional, so I wanted your opinion.
Yeah.
Thank you. Ken, you actually, there was another item on here. We can take it separately, I believe. It was on page 84. It was the hydrogeological study information. And we did ask about, okay, this is the issue. Could you explain the process and when that timing is? What we suggest with this? This is it doesn't relate to the trail view, but does sort of relate to every pond.
Yeah. So the way your resolution is written, it's set up so that if there's an issue after construction, that's when that would be triggered, right? So you're talking about starting something basically near the end of construction because you've seen dewatering impact things. And then there's a time period in there. So that's when it would start. It would be several month process. You start putting in these wells into the ground to start watching the groundwater levels. And then what you do is receive that information over time. You put it into this groundwater model as well to see the impacts. You play into precipitation, as you mentioned earlier. And all that's plugged into this model to see what the impacts are. Is it something that should come back based on the model? Or is this something that won't come back because of how it's been developed or things have been changed? But that is what it is. It's a several month process yet. So it's not like a 2-week answer.
So this particular recommendation is something you'd start while the dewatering process in the fall, or would you do this starting now?
Well, I mean, you can start it now. The sooner you start it, the better you get better information as to what's out there.
Yes.
However, I know that I believe the way your resolution is prepared, it talks about it being more of a trigger based on maybe some concerns that come from the property owners or whatever it may be. So I guess that's a decision you'd have to make if you want to start that.
Sure.
It's not necessary. So like we're watching Blue Haven right now. We've just been over the last month, every week going out taking readings, and Blue Haven pond has been continuing to come up. Pine Island had come up just a little bit. Now it's kind of leveled off. For some reason in the last week, we don't know why. Next week would be different. I don't know.
Sure.
Yep.
How many people are taking water out of the Pine Island for sprinkling?
I guess I'd leave it, yeah, because we did not find any, but
None?
you guys.
Zero? Zero. Good. Good.
You'll notice on that study information also, the estimated cost for the work would be 32,000. That would be the township cost for this.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Mm-hmm. Now, that particular recommendation is separate from the Pine Island, or excuse me, the Trail View approval. It's just part of what we asked for, so it's a separate item. We can table that. In fact, we're not even bringing it up. I bring it up just for explanation, but it's not something that we need to vote on tonight. But we may want to consider that at our planning meeting next week, Thursday, if I would make a recommendation that we set that aside for tonight. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Okay, so the decision that we have in front of us is the approval of the I keep on Pine Island. You guys have screwed me up. The Trail View subdivision and the PUD. Based on Mika's recommendation in the Planning Commission, it came forward to us last month with an approval recommendation. We paused. And if you can just stand up just for a moment, Mika, did you have a chance as a planning commission to reaffirm, or just this is a staff analysis?
This is a staff analysis. So
Analysis,
Planning Commission has approved, and that was just response to your questions from the last time. And I'd also note that you had a version in your packet. We revised some of that language as we were in conversations over the past week. And so that one was on your dais, and it came out via email as well. So that would be the one that we would be recommending.
Super.
Can I make a couple of quick notes?
Please.
Thank you. I'm Tom Woodavine on behalf of the developer. Obviously, we've been working on this project for quite some time and are happy to continue to work with the different government agencies, Ken Bosma's office, obviously Nader Veld's involved. And so it is our intent to continue to be a good neighbor, both to the blueberry farmers to the west and to the north of James Street, Pine Island to the south, Wildflower as well. So we're local to the community, right? We rub shoulders with all of these people. We go to church, we go to school with them. So it is our intent, to be a good neighbor. If if it's something that's done that is causing damage to a well, to a pond, we certainly want to make that right. That is our desire. I think a little bit of the concern we have with the language that's in front of you right now is what appears to feel like guilty until we prove ourselves innocent. We have requested simply some language in there that complaints would go to Ken Bosma's office to substantiate prior to correction. So that was just one of the things that that has been requested. Again, we're happy to engage in conversations about dewatering methods, discharge locations, refilling ponds, working with Joe Bush's office, Ken Bosma's office, the dewatering experts. I think there's solutions to a lot of that as I gather it. There's people involved significantly smarter than I am. So we're happy to continue to do that. We would just ask for, a little bit more assistance from Ken Bosma's office if there are complaints or concerns, prior to just, stating, hey, this came up, prove it wasn't you, because there's some timelines associated with that. So that would just simply be our request.
Is that language in our packet? It is not.
No, there were some changes that we did make along those lines, but I think that the specific change that we did not make was surrounding well water and drinking water. The concern was that if we require something to be validated through Ken's office and it's, say, a Friday on a holiday weekend, then you have a delay in somebody getting drinking water. So in that case, we really saw that should be something that there's a more immediate response to, and then that there can be follow-up as time goes on. And Ken may be able to speak to that more as well.
Yeah, I think Mika addressed it appropriately. That was only our concern, is there could be a delay. Now, I understand where the developer's coming from. They would like to have somebody else confirm that there's an issue, but if somebody's without water due to a dry well, it's important that they get them connected soon. So, and that may be where if we're not in the office for whatever reason, can't respond, they still need to respond.
So if I understand correctly, the developer's requesting some unique language in what's in front of us, but it's not in front of us. And so at this point,
their revised language, my understanding, is not
in this,
correct.
Not in this packet. Yep. So basically it's a moot point. Why are we talking about it at this point? Right? I mean, we're approving something that's not in. It's verbally. Okay. The question I have, do you ask for that language to be in, or do we feel comfortable without the language to be in? I guess I'm looking for my colleagues here to sound off. I'm a bit confused about the developers requested something. It's not in the packet that we have in front of us. He's verbally asking it. I'm not sure that I can approve a verbal request. Dan, give me a little coaching.
There has been some discussion back and forth between Mika and the developer. And Mika has been running that through Ken and me regarding proposed changes to the recommended condition. This is a staff report that has been vetted by your Director of Community Development, Mika, your engineer, Ken, and your attorney, me. And so this is our recommendation to you. Mika did not provide you what they had suggested to her. If you are wanting to look at their language, I would recommend that they provide it to you in writing. And I don't think Mika is obligated to give it to you. But this is the staff's recommendation as vetted through the professional engineer and township attorney, recommending to you as a board for your consideration. You can consider what they've said verbally. But if you're going to do it, you'd have to have an actual change to the conditions that you would have to make
you might want to see that in writing.
Correct. Could that be done later, Dan? Next meeting?
It could be done later if that's what the township board is wanting to do, rather than follow the recommendation of your staff and engineer and attorney.
I'm just saying, if the recommendation from the developer comes next week, next month, and that we have approved PUD, can they modify the PUD with that language or not?
Usually, and I'm starting, because usually we have a thing about changing conditions, because typically
Board can do it.
pardon?
The board has
Yeah,
to.
typically you can change the conditions of a PUD as long as you have the approval of both the board and the developer. The board cannot unilaterally change the conditions. You would require, so number 3 on page 8 of the actual report says revision to conditions. Nothing can be made without first holding a public hearing. So you'd have to have a public hearing, you'd have to properly notice it.
Right.
And then you would be able to change the conditions.
Again, if you actually read this, in response to what you had mentioned, it says, in the event of a disagreement between this is the handout.
The handout. Okay, right.
If you go to, page 14, E, it says, in the event of a disagreement between the township and the developer as to whether a particular well or pond has been adversely affected by the project, the township engineer shall make a written determination to the developer. It's already in there. As far as I'm concerned, and if it happens on the weekend, I mean, if there's disagreement, the developer's probably not going to do anything over the weekend anyway. So to add language, I don't think is necessary.
I didn't have a chance to read that. It was on the dais.
So,
yep. Good. Thank you, Jim. Yep. Good. All right. With that clarifying comment there, Jim, I will entertain a motion or an additional discussion. Please continue on.
Is there, can we put a condition on it to some degree that both of these, since it's the same developer, have to happen at the same time?
You can make any condition you like. I mean, but it might not be possible physically. I mean, based on permitting. I think that'd be one solution.
We have to be responsible for the public.
Yeah.
What probably could happen is I would envision is they already got the permit to do everything in James Street for the sewer that they need to do that way. They could get that done, and they have to try to get that obviously done very quickly because to meet road commission, get that road back. If for some reason Trailview didn't come through from a permitting perspective to meet this fall, my understanding is they have until April from your previous one for putting in James Street, that they could have that permit later this winter then, November, December, and then still install that come February, March, depending on the weather, but probably more March and April. It's not that long of a stretch, nor is it that deep. So it shouldn't be that difficult to install. It's in the field, so it'd be out of the road, Yep.
And I think it would be advantageous for the developer to do them both at the same time,
Yes.
cost wise.
Yes.
So I'm sure you guys are going to do everything you can.
To do it.
I've got a question. So back to page 13, section 21C, regard to pond retention. You state here that the reduction in water quantity of 24 inches or more persists over 6 months. Has that begun already, or is there a start date? Because I went down like 3 or 4 feet already.
That would be when once the project, the dewatering start occurring, if water table starts going down and it's over a 6-month period. And we give it time because obviously if dewatering were shut off, do you expect that pond to come right back up? No, not immediately. It's going to take a little bit of time. But as long as we're seeing it rise somewhere with, let's say they get the work done in 3 months' time, it gives us 3 more months yet to watch. We would expect it to rise, like we have seen in Blue Haven. We have been continuing to watch Blue Haven's pond rise already, strict within 1 month already of the shut off of those pumps. So, yep.
My only concern is we've already seen several feet fall, and we're giving them 2 more feet to fall.
Yep. And again, I think a lot of that has to do with precipitation, but the one other thing to think about here is we're thinking about this here in the fall and winter time. So if they get it done, they'll get it done for what they're saying with the dewatering by November. So we're going to hit the good season of typically of the snow and the rain from November on through April, which they had that opportunity, that same window to build. They would have that opportunity for precipitation to start resurging that ground.
I guess I would respectfully ask that, and I appreciate the speed at which staff was able to, get this resolution kind of reviewed and updated. But the copy we saw, I think came in somewhere between 5 and 5:30 this evening. So the review of it was done on a cell phone comparison to what had previously been provided. Again, I'm glad everybody's pushing for this. We appreciate that, but to give ourselves some additional time to review, to give our attorney some additional time to review the latest updates, I would wonder if it was appropriate to simply table the matter for an additional month to allow all parties to review the agreement prior to passing the resolution. I wouldn't want to say kill, but there is also the opportunity, as it's been alluded to, if the project cannot be permitted to complete this fall prior to November, there is an opportunity to do it early in the year, still complete the dewatering prior to April, and get the road repaved and resurfaced in the spring. So that is another option. Yeah, I would let Ken speak to that more so than me.
One thing I will say is you could table this, you're not required to. This is not like a conditional rezoning where the conditions have to be voluntarily offered by the developer. As I mentioned earlier, these are the conditions that staff is recommending and that the township board can impose. It doesn't require like a contract with conditional rezoning, contractual rezoning. These are your conditions to impose, whether the developer likes them or not. If he doesn't like them, he doesn't have to move forward with his development.
Interesting.
So you as the developer are asking us to table it so you can read the language?
I wouldn't say to read the language, we have read it, but the revised report was just at 5:30, so we did not have an opportunity for our attorney to review it. He reviewed the original resolution, provided some comments, which then we received the revised just an hour before this meeting.
So you want us to table it?
That would seem appropriate to give us an opportunity to continue to hash out the language that both parties can be agreeable to.
I'll make a motion. We table this till next month.
I will support that.
Any other further comments before we take a vote?
Water is full. If that's the case, then the whole thing should move out a year. Both projects should be lined up so that underwater. I mean, blueberry farmer, I'm a blueberry farmer, I'm screaming if you're rewatering.
Please.
May I ask a question?
Hmm.
To the developer, there's.
Dan, for this particular meeting, was there any notice requirement on this meeting?
No,
Okay.
notice required for this meeting, or if you decide to table for next month's meeting,
Okay.
it's just a
So-
general open meetings act notice. There's not a public hearing, so you don't need the 15 days.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. There is a meeting next week. We could suggest, and what I would say is, instead of tabling this a month, whether or not we table this a week, and whether or not the developer can review the language within the next few days, and whether or not there can be a meeting of the minds, if you will, between the developer and staff and the residents in the association. Good friend there is in the front row. Is that enough time for something like that to occur? So Supervisor, it's not standard, but there's nothing that legally precludes us from hearing this next week.
I look at my colleagues to just say, would you be receptive? Typically, our third Thursday is a planning meeting. This would turn it into an action meeting. Are we comfortable with this?
I am.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Okay, so
Can I amend my motion?
Please.
I'll amend the motion that we table this till next week at our meeting.
Strategic planning meeting.
Yeah, the third Thursday, Yep.
6/19.
6/19. Great support from Char. Thank you. All right. All in favor of tabling it till next week, Thursday, the 19th? Yes, the 19th, say aye. All opposed? The motion carries. So we'll talk about it again next week, Thursday. All right. Okay. On to the next item. All right. Next one, staffing update. This is, we talked about it, and let me just get my page out. 240. Let's get that. All right. Hey. Or, yes, there you go. Yeah, but what's it? Okay, what? Okay. Okay. We're gonna pause a moment and get a coffee and a cookie.
Thanks. I appreciate it. I'm gonna get some coffee.
business. Thanks for your contributions on that one. What do they say? Shakespeare, much ado about nothing. You know, we had a lot of discussion and we accomplished nothing. Sort of push it. We were educated. We were. Thank you, Jan, for clarifying what we just did. So, all right. Okay, so we're on D on our action item staffing update. And I'm going to shift over to Manager Fink and have him lead this discussion. I think where we left it last time is that we, in concept, agreed with the positions. We were just asked for the budget clarification, how this would be paid for. So I think you gave us some options. So I'm looking forward to some good discussion about this. So go ahead.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I've expressed on many occasions, and nothing has changed. We need additional capacity. So I'm going to leave it there and open it up for questions, because I think that's really all I have to say, other than I want to make sure that your questions are answered.
So last we talked about it, I was in full support and still am for accounting assistant, whether it's full-time or part-time, as well as code enforcement. After reading through this, I'm 100% in alignment with full-time accountant to aid Connie. I don't know how you want to approach the code enforcement officer. Would this full-time position then send Cal back to the fire department? Or will we have a full-time code enforcer and Cal still part-time until we work through the next 2-3 years on all the short-term rentals?
I think we have the flexibility of doing both. Frankly, I think one of the key questions is that it's not totally clear to me, other than the STR piece, what the board or how the board wants to handle code enforcement moving forward. Historically, code enforcement has been a complaint-driven system. It doesn't have to be the case always. The board can make a different policy. The board can create many nuances around that. We can do some proactive enforcement in certain areas if we wish, and not in others if we don't wish. We as a board have not looked at what they call the ICC property maintenance code in quite some time. I think from a policy perspective, this board really needs to be provided in detail, and I'll lead this conversation with you all, but be provided in detail the ICC property maintenance code. And you really need to think about, or I shouldn't say need to, but it would behoove you to consider in that document the areas and items that you feel as though is not being, enforced from a code compliance perspective, because that's really foundationally how communities do code enforcement. And so it is not clear that you will necessarily want to adopt the ICC property maintenance code in totality. It's also not clear to me that there might be sections that you want to look at or you want to strengthen. Historically, Park Township, and this is still true, we almost have, if you look at Ottawa County, if you look at the Holland region, we have very little blight and nuisance ordinances. We just don't have that much on the books. And we've, as a community, have always made the assumption that we want less regulations and less enforcement. And that might have changed. So I think what the answer to your question is, I think this position, a full-time code enforcement officer position, allows you that flexibility. I think what we would do is tell Cal that we retain that flexibility to call him back if we need code enforcement assistance. I think generally speaking, he would end up moving towards the fire department full-time, but with that flexibility.
As long as we can retain the flexibility, as the short-term rental debacle is not going to go away in the next month.
Correct.
It will probably take 2 years.
Correct.
In addition, and this is my feeling alone, we state again and again that our resolutions come from complaints, and I've seen our community complain to us a lot in the last 4 years, and it's like, we're always asking them to complain to the township on issues. And I myself would like a breather from that. I wouldn't object to reviewing what our codes currently are and picking and choosing if we need to make any modifications or not.
Yeah, so I agree with you, trustee Clark. One of the things that I'm gonna caution you on is just, this is just advice from a broader perspective. Okay, so take it for what it's worth. It's unsolicited advice. In terms of Park Township as a community, it's yes, we have some homes that need some assistance. In terms of the broader perspective of what we're dealing with and the numbers of properties that we're dealing with and the repeat offenders, I wouldn't personally say that it's a problem. So I think that one of the things that you may be experiencing is just what ends up happening in communities when you have an engaged electorate and an engaged board, is there are homes that people end up having concerns about, and those homes are they're going to be the same homes, because in a lot of respects, some of those homes are not, there's not much that can be done in terms of enforcement to get the level of compliance that the neighbors want. And so I've had this conversation many times with different supervisors and different board members. There's a perception that sometimes the residents have that, based on a particular home being, vacant or blighted, that we have the ability to condemn, we have the ability to enforce, we have the ability to comply and compel all kinds of things to have the property fixed up. And what I would say is in truth and in actual fact, it's much more complicated, much more limited. And if we get to the point where we are in fact fixing up properties, we are working against the very thing we're trying to prevent, because we're essentially doing the work for them. And that is literally what we're trying to do the opposite with. And so that's my overall just thought.
The topic that we have in front of us is the staffing analysis. That code enforcement conversation is something to take offline, possibly in a planning meeting on a third Thursday. But in front of us, we have the suggestion of these 2 positions, and just again, further conversations on the 2 positions, and also where the money comes from.
Question.
Please.
When I'm looking at this, it's reading 1 full-time county managerial assistant and 1 full-time enforcement officer. We already have a half of enforcement officer. Does that mean 1.5 enforcement officer, or are we adding 1.5 positions, 1.5 FTEs, or are you suggesting 2 FTEs?
Oh, and 2 new FTEs.
So that means that the EMT is also going to get an additional a half a position. That's my question.
Correct.
And do we have any justification for needing that?
Currently, when Cal is working in the code enforcement section, when he's working over here, we backfill that position with another firefighter, so we continue our 2 minimum standard. So
what you're saying is, do we need another full-time EMT person When we bring on a full-time code enforcement officer, at some point, there's going to, Cal's not gonna be as needed as much in code enforcement, presumably, whether it's 6 months or a year from now. And we may not need that extra half time that Cal provides in terms of code enforcement. Do you have the need and desire for that additional full-time EMT person?
Cal will fill that role.
So we're really adding two positions, two
Two
full-time
full-time.
as
Yes, ma'am.
opposed to.
And they're adding halftime
To the fire department.
to the fire department. Cal will be full-time over there
Correct.
Correct.
in the public safety. Millie will cover.
And that's basically what we have now, because when Cal's working over here, we filled that position
You just.
anyway. Correct. Unless it's vacation days or sick days.
But do we need to? I guess the question is, do we need to? I mean, you're infilling it, but you're infilling it with staff that we have.
Correct.
So do we still need another half position in that EMT?
If I understand correctly, you're saying when Cal's working, you pull one of your part-timers in to fill that position, so you have two on staff.
Correct. And we pay for that.
So you're saying when Cal comes on board, you no longer pay that part-timer anymore.
Correct.
So it's a net zero at this point.
Correct.
There-
Our budget is not, I don't believe our budget is going to change on this at all.
Okay, that's good clarification, because I thought that we would increase the cost of covering the EMTs then.
Yeah, because the slots are there.
Not that I see. So.
Instead of the part-time that doesn't have any benefits, that's a lot less expensive option versus full-time with full benefits.
Yes.
So there's more money, but not incrementally of half-time person. It's incrementally more, but not this much, right? Or I'm simplifying it, but
But we're still paying Cal the benefits, whether he's court enforcement or with me, right? So
But it's not.
So how many full-time EMTs do we have?
2 per shift.
Two. So how many full-time EMTs do we have total?
4.
4.
12 shifts.
And then myself,
You have 3, chief.
well, 3.5, because he works half time in court enforcement.
Is it working out with Cal? We've been past precedents.
No, it is not.
Where are we falling?
That's a really good question. I think that there are a lot of, Mika and I were talking about this this afternoon. We've been talking about this the last few days. I don't have a perfect answer for that. I think some of it has to do with scheduling in terms of how Cal's time is scheduled through the fire department versus code enforcement. I think some of it has to do with potentially the fit in terms of the person to the task, if you will. I think we're still working through that, to be honest with you, Brian.
And at this point. Sorry, and at this point, we're really not addressing the SDRs. Correct?
Correct, but I will tell you that there's not enough capacity. We have spoken with Cal, we have spoken with staff. There's not enough capacity to address the SDRs with a part-time code enforcement officer. Regardless of the complexity of this conversation, you don't have enough capacity.
so if I understand correctly, in order to do STR enforcement, we need to hire the right person to enforce what we say we accomplished on eliminating short-term rentals.
Correct.
So, all right.
So if we hire a full-time one, are we getting rid of the part-time one?
Yes.
Okay.
He's moving back to EMT.
Yep.
He's gonna be that other half.
But the general fund doesn't pay for EMT.
Correct.
So
We would reserve the right to hold that ability to bring him back for code enforcement if we felt like there was a need or desire.
So is that going to be a line item in the budget then?
Yeah, it wouldn't necessarily be a line item in the budget. If we made that call, then if we made that decision, then he would be paid out of a different line item as opposed to the EMT side. He'd come out of general fund as opposed to the fire.
That's my point. Would that be a line item in the general fund budget?
I mean, a code enforcement.
I
specifically.
would suggest, at least initially, yes, that you hold that flexibility.
Okay.
There's a couple options that have been suggested, or actually 4 that have been suggested. I'll just start the options.
Can I ask a few more about,
Please.
just because I'm not down to funding source yet?
That's fine.
So I'm ignorant. I tend to simplify everything, Connie, so forgive me. What's changed? I don't know who's better to answer this, you or the manager. What's changed over the past 3 years with finance that this past time you had to work weekends and many more hours than usual? Was something going on besides your usual responsibilities? Because I've never heard that you've had to do that before. And that seemed really odd to me.
It's been growing over the last few years just because we've added so many things, so many grants, so many assets, so many different projects that we have going on. And it just kind of hit the breaking point this year. And so then other duties that a finance director should be doing are getting pushed aside. And on a day-to-day basis, it may not be critical, but if they're not done over the long term, then you're having some risks there in terms of making sure that everything's being washed like it needs to be.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Mm.
And then my other question is, if there's going to be a assistant to the finance director and the manager, who determines the percentage of time spent with the particular person? That's not spelled out here. And looking at the responsibilities, it looks like there's more responsibilities for the finance person than there would be the assistant to the manager. So how is that going to work?
It was designed mostly as 50-50. Most of what I do, Connie picks up, or not picks up, but is involved in, and most of what Connie does, I'm involved in. So there's so much overlap when it comes to our roles. And there is no shortage of administrative work.
And I think it would kind of help Julie out at the front desk. She does way more than ever. You know, a lot of this will help her position too. It's overwhelming.
So who does that person answer to?
Both of us.
Well, what if one person says one thing and another person says the other thing?
That's true of positions in the office right now.
All right, never mind.
I mean, but it's true.
Got it.
Oh,
You answered my question.
The question I have on that particular position, it seems like when you talk about accountant managerial assistant, is there a particular reason why we started at $100,000 or $99,500? That seems pretty rich for a position.
You're including benefits. That includes benefits.
So that's not base salary.
Am I right, Connor?
Okay. All right. Any other comments about the positions? Then we move on to the funding.
I do. I think some of the similar concern that Jim is verbalizing as far as. And there's a lot here as far as role and responsibility. The thing that scared me is perform other duties and work as a son. Right, it feels like if we want someone to be successful in that position, we're gonna have to be a lot more specific, but specifically they're doing, whether it be, what are they specifically doing for a child, what are they specifically doing for you, what are they specifically doing for county, and I'd like to see more clarification, I guess, around the right role of responsibility. If for no other reason than for the person coming in will have a much greater chance of being successful in the field.
I have an additional comment as well. When you're looking at the qualifications for this position, for it to be successful for Connie, you're asking for a accounting, finance, business degree, but then you're going to have them do administrative task. I'm assuming that the administrative task would be related to finance and accounting. It's going to be hard to find someone that has skills in accounting that want to do some of the administrative tasks. So I'm not sure that that's a good split.
Has there been any suggestion or any consideration for a contract position for the finance? Yeah, in business, we have used folks for specific reasons. Is there a possibility where you could say, okay, we need a finance position for 30 hours a week? Is there any consideration on that?
I would recommend it.
I don't know how that would necessarily prepare us for future years. That would be an individual coming in temporarily, expend hours and time and money, training, bringing them up to speed and learning the township to have them leave in X amount of months. Whereas I kind of look at, if we bring somebody in, we can test the waters to see if they're a good long-term fit for the township. And I'm not going to speak for Connie, but I mean, some year I'm going to retire and some year she's going to retire, and I don't know how we'll fill her shoes.
Yeah. So what I'd like to do is request that the board table the issue of the township manager finance or the account managerial assistant. I'd like to make a few comments before the board reviews that. And then just go ahead and look at the issue of the code enforcement officer. There's really no difference between this position and many of the positions in the office. Many of the positions in the office have a kind of elemental finance clerk accounting background that do administrative work. Maybe I have erred and have not done a good enough job of providing you the details, but it really just doesn't make sense to me. What the conversation and the questions lead to is there the need in the office for this person, and why is there additional staff, and why isn't Howard able to complete those tasks? All I can say to you all is that over the last 5 to 10 years, the level of complexity, the level of work, and the level of efficiency in this office has risen significantly. If you are in the office, you would see the level of administrative work that happens on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis. Put it on me that I'm not the one who wrote it well enough or communicated it well enough, but I cannot continue to think that there is not additional capacity necessary when there is. When I have staff members have sort of panic in their voice when I ask them questions on various administrative items that the board is working on, that is a point at which we are, the staff are breaking. And I don't go into the details in these meetings, okay, over all those situations, because all it does is effectively create blame shifting. And all I can do is say additional capacity administratively is needed and additional capacity for Connie is needed. I recognize that it's challenging to figure out how to put that together, but I do not understand in any way, shape, or form how this position is fundamentally different than the deputy treasurer or an individual in the clerk's office who does significant work around fund accounting, not traditional accounting that Connie is doing, but transactions on a day-to-day basis. Okay. What I can tell you all, folks, is I don't have an assistant. Okay. We are a community of almost 20,000 people. We have one of the largest park systems in the entire area. We have one parks employee. We have one of the most robust building departments in the area. We have a small staff. We've added staff to that department, and I'm glad that we have. There was a time when Mika was at the point where she was breaking, and we've added capacity there, and I think that that's improved. I don't have an assistant. Okay, part of what Jan has communicated to you is Julie is taking on a role and a level of work that is significant. If we want to have further conversations, I would suggest maybe we potentially go into closed session and have some conversations relative to that. But I don't know how else to explain it. Plain on me for not communicating it, writing it well. Jim, I'm not answering, of what happens when there's two people, asked for a role. I mean, today we don't have perfect hierarchies even today. It's a local government process that's quite iterative.
So shifting through the manager's request or suggestion that we can table the first position and have some further conversation, or we can continue on and talk about each one individually. I'm open to suggestions on this. I think we talked about the code enforcement with prior to talking about this finance administrative position, but I'm open to discussion on either one or both together. What's your inclination, team?
I think we discussed both of them, but individually, because we'll vote in individually.
Okay. All right. I think the one that is in front of us that I sense, and I may be wrong, I sense that the code enforcement officer position is one that we can agree with, that we are in a position that we need to address a specific thing aggressively, and we need to take care of it now. And so I would like to suggest that position is one that we move forward with in it. So we can talk about where the funding comes from, but I think we even talked around it a few moments ago about the halftime is already being picked up in the public safety fund. And this is a new position, arguably a full-time position for us. So I would entertain a movement towards a motion or more discussion on that position. And the 4 funding methods, if you want to get into the gritty details on that, we can talk about that as well right now too.
I'll make a motion. We add a code enforcement officer.
Support.
Great. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Jan. All right. Any further discussion about the position?
Do we need to choose where the budget and funding come from, or those are just suggestions right now?
Thank you for that question, Trustee Clark. I don't actually think you do. I think that those are four areas that that we feel comfortable that they're going to be there. I
That's
don't.
who I'm reading.
I don't think you need to choose anything. That was one of the things that I had as a carryover from the last time we talked about this, and was a little unsure of things because Connie and I are comfortable that there's room there. And at the end of the day, we have to balance that budget. And if in 6 months or 8 months, we feel like there's a concern, then we address it. So I don't know that you need to pick one of those four. Unless you decide you want, the cable franchise fee and you want that to be the specific line item, then obviously. But if it was me, I would take number one and move on, because I think you have the room in the budget.
I agree. So with that, okay.
We have a motion on the floor. Any questions? I would agree that I don't think we need to decide on the specific funding method. I think we rely on our CFO to guide us on that. And so we can make that recommendation. Obviously, we go into the budget season and it gets a bit more concrete. This is mid-year that we're adding this position, but arguably it's going to take a few weeks and or months to hire a person in this position. So it's not going to be tomorrow that we have to pay the bill or the salary for this position. Although we should get the enforcement going. And we'll lose Cal.
Full time.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So any other questions before making the motion? Or excuse me, vote on the motion? Okay. All right. All in favor of the code enforcement officer full-time, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, motion passes.
What I sense is that there's uncomfortableness right now on the finance administrative position, so
if I may make one more comment on that. It's the accounting side is a skilled role, and it is going to take a person some time for onboarding and learning. That doesn't happen in a month. I look, when I bring engineers on staff, yeah, they've got engineering backgrounds and know what to do, but maybe to a company, they're not 100% for a year. And that's just the fact of it.
And government accounting is different than regular accounting. So it's a learning curve. And I do think Shar had said it before, we need to prepare for the future also.
That's what this was.
We're all getting up there in age.
That's what this was supposed to be.
We need to think of the future. We have a lot of employees that are getting at that retirement age. We need to have a base underneath to rely on and to have trained.
And maybe we work, and I'll even volunteer to help work on job description.
Yeah.
And not necessarily 50-50, but I really think I need 75 and something else.
Right.
Woven within here.
I think the finance side of our township has always been strength, and that's due to that person, and I'm sure many other people. So I'm 100%. We need to do something. What exactly we should do? I'd love to see some more clarity around. That makes sense.
Since we've changed at next week's meeting from just a working meeting to we'll be talking about a few things. Is that an item that can be added to the agenda in time for next week, or?
I would, knowing what we have to accomplish with the mid-year plan, I respectfully decline to add that more. Then it becomes more of a working meeting than a planning meeting. So thank you, Shar, but we can push it into next month. So.
But it sounds like, Howard, we need more clarity on job description to feel comfortable.
I hear that. I think it's not I hear that. I think the clarity is there needs to be more comfort level as to where the work is coming from. I don't think it's a clarity on the job description, because I don't know how to be more clear that we're hiring what we're hiring. I think that the clarity is where and why is it happening, and I think that that's a conversation that is a deeper conversation. And so I realize I'm saying more than I probably do in the past, but I don't know how to sugarcoat it any longer.
Yeah, and being that I've been here so long, I was full-time. I see what's going on. I think I understand it more than a lot of you guys. There's a lot of stress with our employees in the office. So I just want to, stress that.
No fun. All right. All right. We're good.
And as far as responsibilities go, I mean, these are very generic as opposed to SMART goals, which are very specific and time bound. So I don't think we need to go to that depth, but this can be finessed. The percentages next to them, like I said,
I don't think that that's necessarily something that I've seen or has been productive or has been effective in local government. I've never seen it. I understand that those are great suggestions, certainly, SMART goals, time-bound goals. I wish some of you would shadow me for a month. And then I think based on that, there becomes a better understanding of what's going on. And for those board members who I'm not talking with on a week-to-week basis, I encourage that communication to pick up again.
I looked into our ADP system today for accounting job descriptions. And actually, while not 100%, because again, it's government, it aligned pretty closely to what my current company looks for in generalities with job descriptions.
There's. Just move on. So we'll talk about next month. Okay, going on to item 12, discussion of possible action items. We have the presentation recently from the sheriff. And there's a couple items I was asked to talk with our colleagues. I talked to our colleagues over at Holland Township, of which Howard and I did yesterday. 3 individuals had approached me in conversation, or I had approached them in different various situations in the last 60 days, and both had been interested to, all 3 of them had been interested in continuing the coverage conversation and what we have going with Holland Township. What that led to was yesterday at 10:30, we had a meeting with Steve Boltheis and Russ Tesla, and they put a number on the table, and it was substantial enough to make me curious if there's more. I think there is more. I talked to Eric DeBoer yesterday, and he was actually interested to advocate for us to change the percentage of the 8 officers. So there's additional conversation, he believes, in movement on the financial side. I can leave it at that. I'm not at liberty to say the number because he hasn't presented it to his board. But I'm just going to say that there's movement on the financial side to keep the current business model or coverage model and reduce our percentage to a more I'm not saying more reasonable, but I think that there's opportunities to improve that without changing our coverage. That's one way that we can change the financial model today. And as we heard from Mr. DeBoer, Sergeant DeBoer, or Sheriff DeBoer, Sheriff DeBoer, is that they're working on different changes in the next 2 years, and he's sharing that plan with the Holland Township folks as well. So that's an update on that sheriff coverage. conversation. And if you so desire, I will continue the conversation with Russ to formalize that percentage change and then also encourage conversation. Sheriff DeBoer was confident that he could help us as well. So
Do we gain, how do we maintain current coverage and better at a reduced cost?
they recognize that we are probably carrying more than we should.
We're paying for more than what we're getting.
No, we're paying more for, yes, they're willing to change the number slightly, but it is going to be substantial. I mean, the percentage, what he threw out was enough to make me do a quick calculation on the paper, and it was positive. So, the one thing the observation that Steve Boltheis said, he says there may be, and he says, it was an interesting phrase. He says, Park Township may pay a bit more to have the ready to serve coverage.
Are there any other organizations that would offer that same exact phrase to us?
Well, I don't know, but Sergeant DeBoer called me the other day, or just this week. Jeff Jones, our community policing officer, identified that Ottawa Beach Road had started to get the loud cars, mufflers, speeding already.
Oh, yeah, it's been weeks.
Sheriff DeBoer immediately put our coverage team that we pay for on Ottawa Beach Road in the OBR Historic District, positively responded to him expressing their appreciation. That was available. That would be ready to serve coverage. You had the capacity in the system to put on it immediately. It wasn't a grant. It wasn't a person from, Fillmore filling in, but he was very excited to tell me that was what you get when you have
just
folks there. Well, I mean, I think we need to be more advocate for ourselves to do that. So, but he was pleased that this was available. So I just share what I'm learning. So,
but Steve, how long does that last? I mean, putting that ready to serve in the Ottawa Beach area.
As long as the problem is,
2 months.
or until it goes away, and then the 8 men and women who service are always on call 24/7. So that's in some sense how it runs today. Is that 24/7? There's 8 more people
So
on.
we need to make sure that we ask for that.
Sure do. That we need to be advocate. Jeff, would that be that's a relation? You mind coming up and just explain a little bit about how you work with the 8 people?
I don't mind at all talking to the board. I feel a little uncomfortable because the sheriff has already discussed this, but you have some specific questions that I feel like I'm the appropriate person to answer. I'd be happy to answer them.
Yeah. So like for instance, last weekend, or you identified something with the Ottawa Beach historical situation, a beach situation about noise.
Correct.
And that was you had a team to pull from. Yeah. Could you describe what happened?
Yeah, so I was getting complaints and then noticing myself that it was more than I could just handle on my own, right? Because I also have to take calls that are coming in Park Township. So what the sheriff did was come up with a plan so that each night in the evening, because really the biggest problems comes in the sunset, right? Everybody's leaving, going to or coming or leaving the sunset. So one of those former unit deputies is assigned every night to just sit there. That's where you end your shift every night. And then he took one of the county funded traffic cars and had him out here all day on Saturday. But that seemed to have helped. And if you watch Park Township Informed, you'll notice that there's positive comments on there, which is rare.
Something that we could ask for continually during the summer.
Absolutely, yeah. But that was initiated, by me and the sheriff recognizing the issues. But if that was something that if you noticed a specific issue you'd like us to address, please let us know.
And thank you, Jeff. You're our community
Oh, yeah, you're welcome.
point guy, and we, honestly, we should be probably filtering more stuff through you.
Absolutely.
If there's issues from the board, I mean, honestly,
Yeah.
I mean,
Part of the issue is that we just need to ask.
yes.
And, you know, obviously the sheriff lives here, right? He's happy to talk to any of you anytime, but I'm also a conduit that you can use to send information or make requests, right?
He does not hear the race cars.
He's said in this room before that he hears it.
If I may. Sure. I'd like to clarify something because I'm going to be honest with you. I have a different opinion of this, and it's clear that I have a different of opinion, but I want to make sure that the board understands the difference here. And I'm not sure what the right answer is. So don't hear any of my comments to say that one is right and one is the other. But I want to be clear because I think we are conflating the issue here, in my opinion. The readiness to serve charge is a comment that's made that is relative to the township's paying of 20% of the 8 deputies that we have. Okay, so the township, prior to us getting into the E-unit program or us getting into paramedics or EMTs, the township had E-unit deputies. Jeff Jones was one of those E-unit deputies. And those E-unit deputies are the 8 E-unit deputies that we're talking about. Okay, when those E-unit deputies, when the E-unit program went away, the board made a decision to continue the same level of police staffing as prior. Though those E-units essentially are 20% of 8 deputies. And when their comment is made that there's a ready to serve charge, that comment is reflective of the fact that an opinion that because we pay the 20% of those 8 people, that there's more flexibility to deploy individuals when there are issues. One of the things that I have suggested is that the board look at the cost benefit analysis of, instead of having a percentage of individuals, having a full-time person to deploy instead of a percentage of 8, just saying, okay, we're not going to do 20% of 8. We're just going to get rid of all the percentages and we're going to have our full-time people. The car that was brought in to deploy for Ottawa Beach Road was the county car.
So one of the former E-unit deputies will be on Ottawa Beach Road during sunset time every night for the foreseeable future. That car that was brought in on a Saturday was a county funded car.
Right. And so one of the things that I have asked as an administrator is, what level of ability do I have, or does the board have, to say, hey, when there is an issue, we want to have a resource available to that issue. Currently, those resources are in Holland Charter Township, and there's tremendous call volume in Holland Charter Township, and those officers are going from call to call to call. And I made that comment, a few weeks ago, a month ago, and that comment is true, right? They are going from call to call to call. And so, this notion of the ready to serve charge is Steve Boltice and others saying that that's one of the benefits that you are paying for in your 20%. I don't know that as a ready to serve, anything would change from the perspective of how you all as board members view the patrol, because you will actually have, in my opinion, if you had another full-time person as opposed to portions of that, you would have greater flexibility in deploying a resource to where it is that you want. The downside of that is there's less flexibility on the scheduling side at those, as it relates to the sheriff, in terms of scheduling those officers within either Park Township or Holland Charter Township. Because we go from portions of 8 people to just 2 full-time people. I'm not sure that that ready to serve charge changes from the dynamic of what you all see. I actually think that you might actually see improved coverage and flexibility if you had another full-time person. If there's an issue on OBR, one of my first calls is to call Jeff and say, hey, Jeff, we're having issues, and he goes out there and he handles it. He's our community policing officer. Essentially, you would have another Jeff Jones and another Jeff Jones to be able to concentrate on the road and concentrate on traffic issues as well. But you'd have another officer just like Jeff Jones to be able to call and say, hey, deal with this issue or deal with that issue or deal with this issue. From an administrative perspective, I actually think you would have greater flexibility.
I think the argument the sheriff has made in regards to that is twofold. Number one, we don't currently have a way to assess how much time those deputies are spending in Holland Township versus Park Township, and that's something that he's working on. So he can come to you and show you that, right? Yeah, the other argument I'm sure that he would make is that when you pay into that pool of those deputies, sorry, I keep missing you, Brian. Put in the middle here. When you pay into that pool of deputies, you have access to all 8 of those deputies. Right? If you have just an opposite of me, you just have another one person, right?
Right.
Which
Correct. I do not.
The question I continue to go back to is is the system broken enough for us to change it dramatically? And I'm struggling with the system doesn't seem to be broken. The percentages in the financial model might have to be tweaked, and policing is something that is evolving with the new leader that they have in place. And so I just kind of go like, is it incremental change financially and we keep the same model, or do we dramatically change it as Manager Fink suggests and do something dramatically, we do something different? And I just I'm struggling with the change and the significance of the change. And after having a couple dollars offered from Holland Township and hearing their voice of saying they appreciate us as a partner, I think there's something of value of working with a adjoining township on something that is truly important for all of us. I mean, I don't buy much groceries in Park Township. I don't eat very often in Park Township. I mean, we as a community always go east for our services. And so I'm not saying I want to subsidize Holland Township. I want to cooperate with them and have an environment as a Holland community. Are we getting jacked around by Holland Township? I sincerely disagree with that. I think it's a fair system. It's a good coverage. And so I'm inclined to continue to work with our partners, both the sheriff and Holland Township, to figure out a mutually agreed solution versus something dramatically different. Now, again, I'm really new to the game, but I trust the professionals on some of this stuff. Hard for me to argue with folks who are in the cars and calling it. So anyways, yeah, please.
Just a real quick question, another question on the ready to serve. Okay, we use the example of putting a car out.
So, Joe, I'm sorry. I'm just a deputy, so I don't even know what that means. Ready to serve is.
That was just
It was a comment.
That was a comment by a township manager just saying that the pool of folks you end up having availability.
Sure, of course.
24/7.
Okay, all right.
That's the concept when he says that.
This pool we got one person to go out to Ottawa Beach Road.
Right.
What if we have another issue? Will we get a second person or are we done with that?
Sure, potentially. The fact that those two townships are working together gives the sheriff the flexibility to move those people around, right? So if there is an issue, another issue, we can address that issue. But Holland Township may have an issue that we need to address there, right? But it gives the sheriff the flexibility to deploy those resources in different areas where they need it.
Super. Any other questions for our colleague? All right. Thank you, Jeff. Thanks for what you do. Going on to the next one, we received a wonderful presentation from Alex Eric from the MAC on the MAC Active Transportation Plan. One request he had was to jump on board and to affirm it. I don't have the transportation plan in front of us. That wasn't part of our board packet. Y'all had it last month on Thursday. The only reason I bring it up is I think there's an advantage to be in the game with MAC. Today was a good example. We talked about a bike path that we received $400,000. They have a holistic view of bike paths and roads. And I just think that it's appropriate for us as a board to affirm what they're doing and jump on board. And the integration, their maintenance guidance, integration with the whole area. And honestly, they didn't ask for money from us. There wasn't a financial burden. They weren't saying, hey, you agree with this, your portion goes up or your stipend goes up. I just think that this is one of those things where you go like, let's initiate something that adds, we have a wonderful bike system, but the community at large has a tremendous bike system. So we don't have to take a vote, but I'm going to suggest that at some point in the next month or two, we do take a vote and affirm our support of that MAC Active Transportation Program. And we could do that officially next week or next month if you would like. Any comments or questions about that? Jim, you weren't there at the meeting, but it was an excellent presentation.
And that would be the plan that they presented to.
It'd be the plan they presented, yes. Yep. So we'll put on the agenda for next month. Okay. All right. Strategic planning session. Our manager has given us a couple of emails about different areas or items that we had on the January plan that we need a mid-year update. Next week, Thursday, we'll do another session on the strategic planning. Obviously, we're going to share a little time with the Trailview PUD, but the point of the planning session is to look at what we said we were going to do and are we doing it? And if there's a couple, 2 or 3 things to add to it. It isn't a whiteboard session where we're going to start sticking things up. This is really more of a mid-year, stay focused. Are we on track of what we're doing? Manager Fink has a couple of things he wants to bring up and which are appropriate, but it isn't a wide open playing field. I just want to say that right up front. Kurt's going to guide us into a more focused session. I just want to make sure that I set your expectation that it is going to be focused. As at 6:30, no dinner, just hopefully we'll be done. Ideally that the Trailview program takes half hour or less. Knock on wood, or Formica, I hope. But I would be hopeful that we have a good hour and a half on our planning or less. I mean, if we're efficient, maybe we do that quickly. Any questions? It is here. Any questions or comments for Manager Fink or myself as we plan for next week? Okay, super. We have 2 closed sessions and I will, Dan, you want to say it or you got it? All right.
I want to specify the specific pending litigation for 13. There are actually 2 different cases. And so I want to specify the number and I will send them to Danielle for the minutes. But to specify what that pending litigation is, both are in circuit court. One is case number 2025-008263CH. The other is case number 2025-008303-AA. And then you could have, I would say, both motions for the closed session to discuss specific pending litigation as provided in 13. And if you want to go into closed session to consider the purchase of real property under 14, you can make both motions at once, and we just go into closed session with time and then come back out. Okay. Rather than going in, coming out, going back into under 14. Okay.
Can I go for it?
Go for it.
Okay. Pursuant to section 8(1)(e) of the Open Meetings Act, to consult with its attorney regarding trial or settlement strategy in connection to specific pending litigations as described by our attorney a moment ago, but only if an open meeting would have a detrimental financial effect on the litigating or settlement position of the public body. Should we take a vote on that one alone, Dan, or do you recommend that? Can I say the second one?
Go ahead and say the second.
Okay, I'll do this.
Theoretically, closed session or.
Appreciate it. Pursuant to section 15.2681D of the Open Meetings Act, to consider the purchase or lease of real property up to the time an option to purchase or lease the real property is attained. That's the motion on the table. Do I hear support? Great, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Has to be.
Thank you. Roll call. Thanks, Joan. Thank you.
All right, trustee Clark,
Yes.
trustee Gerard,
Yes.
trustee Jones.
Yes.
Treasurer Stegler,
Yes.
Supervisor Stillhoff.
Yes.
And clerk Zins, yes.
Motion passes.
A few short minutes.
Right.
Do I hear a motion to return from closed session?